Hey guys, my name is Hannah, and this is my confession. I did something terrible to my brother, and he almost died because of it. I'm very sorry about it, and I am very ashamed, but I had a reason for doing it. It all started when my father left our family. To be precise, my mom kicked him out, and it happened when I was a baby. As far as I know, my parents were always fighting over money. Of course, raising a child is not only difficult, but also extremely expensive. Plus, I had an older brother, Dunn, who also needed to be cared for. And at this difficult time, my dad was fired from his job and he began to look for another one. But it wasn't that easy. Mom said he sat at home for months and only had a few interviews. Soon, the constant lack of money and fighting led my parents to divorce. The court ordered him to pay alimony, but the fact is that my father practically didn't work, so the money he paid my mom was just pennies. Of course, this affected our family very much. I don't remember it, but my mother said we lived in terrible poverty. All the money she had went to diapers and baby food. In those days, there was no question of resting or going anywhere. And it completely changed my brother's attitude toward me. I started noticing it when I went to school. My classmates had older brothers and sisters, and they loved each other very much and constantly took care of each other at school. But Dunn never tried to connect with me or even ask me how I felt. It was the opposite, actually. He avoided me and was always angry when I asked for help. And this went on for years. The older I got, the worse his attitude toward me got. And I was 100% sure that he just hated me. I was very upset because I didn't understand what the reason was for this attitude. We were a family, after all. I was very patient, but at one point, I got tired of it. Dunn was going to the movies with friends that night, and Mom told him to take me with him. Honestly, I didn't want to go with my brother. I knew it would turn into an endless stream of insults, but Mom wanted a break from both of us, so we had no choice. Needless to say, my brother was very unhappy about this. I knew I was keeping him from having fun, so I tried to stay out of their conversation. I just wanted to watch a movie, but Dunn decided otherwise. He told me to go for a walk for a couple of hours while they watched the movie, and with the money that was meant for my ticket, he bought a huge container of popcorn. This wasn't fair. It wasn't my idea to go to the movies, and now my brother was making me just walk around the mall alone? Oh no. At that moment, I decided that I wasn't going to forget this. Just like that. My brother had been bullying me for the past few years, and I couldn't even say anything back. I was going to get back at him and make him regret what he had done. I knew Dunn had a habit of drinking a lot of tea. Every day he took a thermos mug with him and drank it on the way to school. So I came up with a plan to punish him. He had an important test that day, and I wanted him to fail it, so I stole my mom's sleeping pills, crushed them up, and slipped them into Dunn's tea. He was supposed to get sleepy, lose concentration, and get an F on the test. After that, if everything went according to plan, he would have problems at school and Mom would punish him. So I sat in class, and I was glad I finally got my revenge. But suddenly, I heard the sound of a siren. An ambulance pulled up to the school. I had a bad feeling right away. Dunn became ill right in the classroom, and he fainted. The teacher called an ambulance, and now my brother got taken to the hospital. Oh my gosh, I was starting to feel super guilty. This was not what I had intended. What had I done? Half an hour later, my mother picked me up, and we went to the hospital. I can't tell you how I felt. I knew it was all my fault, but I was too scared to admit it, so I just kept quiet and cried. When we arrived at the hospital, the doctor said everything would be fine. Someone decided to play a prank, and Dunn had overdosed on sleeping pills. My brother was asleep when we went to his room. He was very pale. It was clear that he felt very ill, and it all happened because of me. We spent the day in the hospital. Mom was taking care of some business with the doctors, and I was sitting by Dunn's bed the whole time. Suddenly he woke up and saw me. He was scared. Dunn told me that he was just sitting in class and felt dizzy and that he remembers nothing. He thought he might die, and he could have if the doctors hadn't helped him. Then he said something I didn't expect to hear. He started apologizing for the way he had treated me this whole time. He was being stupid because he'd been mad at me since he was a kid. When Dad left, Mom was all about me, and Dunn was left on his own. Money was constantly lacking, and he had to give up hockey because Mom could not afford Dun's hobby. Hockey was the only thing he loved, and he was mad at me for messing it up. But now he regrets it because it wasn't my fault. At that moment, I burst into tears and hugged him. He had never spoken such warm words to me before. I wanted to admit that I poisoned him, but our relationship had started to improve. I thought if I confessed, he would hate me even more. From that moment on, our lives began to change. The poisoning investigation continued for some time, but then the dust settled and our lives became quiet. Dunn tried to make amends for all the years that had passed, and he became very nice to me, but it didn't make me feel any better. On the one hand, I was glad that we had started living like a normal brother and sister, but on the other hand, it happened because I almost killed my brother. I just wanted to play a little joke on him, but I miscalculated, and it led to something terrible. But despite the fact that everything turned out well, I was always tormented by my conscience for what I had done. Every day the burden grew heavier and heavier. I didn't know how much longer I could take. And one day, I confessed everything. It was my birthday. At school, Dunn came up to me and said he had a surprise for me. We skipped school, and my brother took me to an amusement park. We realized we'd never had fun together before, and we needed to catch up. For several hours, we rode the rides, played games, and had fun. But the thing is, I couldn't put it out of my mind that I had poisoned Dunn. Then he said that it was time for us to go home, and that there was a big gift waiting for me. At that moment, I couldn't contain myself. I burst into tears and confessed everything. This information shocked him. Imagine your sister telling you that it was her fault that you nearly died. We drove home in silence. Dunn must have been digesting this information. On this day, I not only spoiled my birthday, but also our relationship. As I expected, Dunn began to hate me twice as hard, and my life turned into hell all over again. I swear to you he called me things I'd rather not say out loud, but that's okay compared to what happened next. Mom said she had to go on a business trip for 2 weeks, and Dunn would be in charge of the house. I knew that these 2 weeks would not be a paradise vacation for me, and I was right. As soon as my mom left, Dunn just started jeering at me. He treated me like a soldier he was giving orders to. My brother made me clean the house and cook all day, and if I refused, he yelled at me so hard that I thought he was going to kill me. It was his revenge for what I'd done. I understood that, and I just tolerated it. But soon he went too far. He tried the soup I made, and he said I put too much salt in it. Then he just poured it on the floor, and he said to clean it up and make a new one. It was so horrible and humiliating, like I was not human. I felt like a used rag. I never felt so bad in my life, so I just dropped everything and ran out of the house. I didn't even know where I was going. I just walked the streets and thought about everything that had happened. These thoughts brought tears to my eyes. I was so depressed that my own brother was treating me like that. Yes, it was my fault, I'd hurt him, but he'd treated me like dirt all my life. Didn't I deserve to be forgiven for one thing? I just cried and wandered around the city until it was completely dark. But when I decided to go home, I realized that I did not know where I was and that I did not have a phone to find my way home. I was scared. The neighborhood seemed sinister. I flinched at the slightest rustle. I started running down the street looking for people to ask for help. Finally, I saw a man. I was very scared to talk to him, but I plucked up the courage, asked for help. I called Dunn and told him where I was and waited for him. Honestly, I thought he'd just kill me for running away from home. But when the taxi drove up and my brother got out, he ran to me and gave me a big hug. He said he was worried about me when I didn't come home after sunset, and he apologized for the way he'd been treating me lately. After that, we talked a lot and apologized a lot to each other. We had both been terrible. And the fear of losing each other was the only thing that made us realize that we were family and that we should forgive each other no matter what. And if we could have figured it out sooner, so many of these terrible things wouldn't have happened to us. That was my story. Thank you for listening to it all the way through. What is your relationship like with your brothers and sisters? Tell me in the comments, and be sure to share this story with your friends.